That is amazing. This is the first time I am attempting this. I don't think anyone else here has tried this either. So this is a very cool experiment to see whether or not this works. And if it does, great. And we can try to do it in the future. But today's meeting today is for Becky. Becky is launching a book very soon. And since Meg, Andrea, and I all have experience in marketing, we are going to just talk about Becky's book and how we would approach marketing her book from our specific lens. So, Becky, if you want to tell everyone about yourself and what you do and what your book is.
Yes, I'm Becky Mollenkamp. I'm a feminist business coach. The book is called Liberate Your Business. It's a radical guide for business owners who want to challenge capitalism while still existing inside of capitalism. And it's finished. So that part is exciting. Yesterday, I completely finished. I have everything ready both for the print and the EPUB. I mean, I still have to do some of the behind the scenes stuff, but it's at least ready and formatted. And it's broken down just so people kind of know the format of it. There's 25 chapters, which is a lot because they're short. My goal is to make it really digestible content because that's kind of how I like to read business books versus like long form narrative. So each chapter starts with a really brief story that's from my own life and business that relates to whatever the topic is. Then I go into sort of this reality check, talking about the systemic issues behind whatever the topic is, whether that's mindset, marketing, legacy, visibility. And then there's the liberatory reframe, which is then sort of how do we think about the same thing through a liberatory lens versus just the lens we've been given by capitalism. There's journaling prompts in every chapter. In many of the chapters, there's Q&As with incredible people who've been on my podcast who talk about whatever the topic is through that liberatory lens, or there's other kinds of action items, helpful things that people can actually use inside of their business. And then each chapter ends with 6 micro liberations, they're called, just action steps that you can start taking right away to make changes in your own business if you want to do business in this way that is more liberatory. So it's like 210 pages roughly. So it's like a real book, which is very exciting. But it's also the way it's broken down. I think it's going to be really easy for someone like myself with maybe some neurodivergence to be able to read as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think everyone who is in business recognizes the importance of having a book if you are able to, and just getting it out there as much as you can. Can you talk a little bit before we get into each of our own examples of what you have planned for your book launch or whatever marketing you're doing before we dive in and suggest things that you're already going to do?
No, you make it sound like I have a lot planned, Kevin. Well, I originally was wanting to release the book next month. I realized I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by pushing too quickly. So I'm pushing that back until late April. It could go early May. We'll see. I'm trying to make sure I get all the behind the scenes stuff because I want to give myself a solid, at least like 8-week, maybe slightly more runway of just promotion before it comes out. I'm still trying to figure out like whether I want to do pre-orders or not because I don't know. I mean, my primary goal, which I think is important to know, is to publish a book. I'm going to hit that goal. So like, I'm ready to celebrate myself just for that. Secondary goal is for the book to help me with visibility and credibility as a feminist business coach, opening more doors to be interviewed on podcasts or, in media, and for people to say, this person probably knows their stuff. There's something about a book that, as we all know, helps with that. So I think that will also help. That will also happen. For sales, I have really, I think, reasonable goals, which is if I can sell 100 books, I'll feel amazing. And frankly, I think I can probably do that. Like that feels like my minimum. I feel confident I can get there just with the amazing community of people that I know who support me. If I sell 500 books, I will feel wildly successful. I'm not looking to be a bestseller. I'm self-publishing. I know that's not a realistic thing to be like on the New York Times bestseller list. I don't need that. I'm not looking to sell tens of thousands of books because I don't want the pressure of that. I just spoke with somebody who's writing a romance novel that's trying to be a New York Times bestseller, and the anxiety that she's feeling through all of that pressure that she's putting on herself and her publisher is putting on her. I don't want any of that. So I just want to be clear about my goals. And to sell the 500 books even, I do know I need to do some marketing beyond just saying to the people I know, hey, I wrote a book. So right now I have a wait list. It's at beckymollencamp.com/book, where people can get on the wait list. I'm not emailing people, like I'm not adding you to my email list. I'm not doing anything. It's just to let you know when you can either pre-order or order, depending on what avenue I go with that. I'm planning to do a book bundle. I learned from Amelia Ruby, who is off the grid and just had her own self-published book, that she really, the bulk of the money she made off of her book was through the book bundle part that she did. In her case, she offered a book and then like a mini retreat. I think it was just a few hours getting together and sort of talking. I didn't go. I bought it, but I didn't go. I have a feeling a lot of people who just care a lot about her or want to support her purchase that bundle. So I'm thinking about doing a bundle. Kevin had, I think either you told me or together in our brainstorm that we previously had, we had the great idea of doing a private podcast feed. So I have this private podcast feed I'm not using. The bundle will include weekly over 1 year. So 52 weeks of weekly private podcast feed of me sharing ideas for how you can be implementing this stuff this week, right? So every week I'll be in your ears. I podcast anyway. A lot of it'll be sort of from the book, but I'll tweak it and make it original and giving people just those reminders, right? We read a book, we forget. So the goal is to say, I'm going to be in there checking in on you to make sure you're making some of these changes. Have you thought about doing this thing this week? Beyond that, I don't know. I was also thinking the bundle might include a few other little fun goodies, like just like cute things like stickers or whatever. Embroidering. I think I might make little embroidered keychains. So but little fun things. But that's kind of as far as I've gotten, is like ordering a certain number of copies myself that'll be less expensive that I can then mail out, probably only US. Sorry, Andrea, maybe Canada, but we'll see. I don't know. Depends on shipping costs, which are outrageous right now. But within the US, at least, to offer those bundles that I'll send out with a little note to those people. And if I could sell like 100 of those at, I don't know, $50 or something, then that would be like as much as I would have gotten from an advance anyway. And that would feel amazing. So, and then otherwise for marketing, I don't know, my newsletter, my social media, I don't have a real solid plan. So I'm very excited for this.
Awesome. So since Andrea's in the top left of my corner, I'm going to go there first. Just introduce yourself and what you do, and the fact that you're also an author is helpful. So go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are before we get into what you would suggest.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So my name is Andrea Jones. I am a marketing strategist. I focus a lot on community building and social media marketing, and my ultimate goal is to help business owners with simpler, smarter marketing strategies that fit in with their real life. And then by night, I am a queer fiction romance author. I have published exactly one book. And so I'm very proud of myself for that. But I'm excited for this conversation also for myself as I work on the next book as well, but also to share some of my experiences as I've gone through that process myself.
Amazing. And then Meg, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey there, my name is Meg Casewell. Pronouns are she, her, and I have written 3 full books and 1 novella, and have a 4th coming out in 2 months that I have to finish formatting. God. So it started with a business book based on a podcast that I ran for 2 years. The podcast and the book were called Social Slowdown. It was about finding some it's choices on how to market your business without being as dependent on social media in order to support your mental health and the time constraints that social media takes on. My day job is a search strategist. So I used to say SEO, but SEO has basically been chewed up and spit out by AI. So we'll just leave it as search strategist. So if you want to show up on Google, YouTube, ChatGPT, Claude, any of those platforms, I can help with showing up on those places. And so in the same way that Andrea is saying, I want to help people with marketing overall, but focusing on community and social, my thought process is always, how can we build more authority? How can we make it so that people, when they think Becky Mollencamp, they think liberatory, feminist, business, right? So how can we make those connections in our marketing? And some of that is search and some of that is strategic content, but so much of content marketing now is just reinforcing the same ideas in a variety of different places, including Amazon. So we'll be talking about that. And then much like Andrea, I'm also a novelist. So my first book was business. My next 2 full-length, I have two full-length novels out that are romance novels. And so I write a lot. is the answer.
Awesome.
Oh, and the reason that this sort of came together perfectly is that Becky is underselling how much she's already leveraging her community. Because back in December, Becky sent a letter to her email list and said, "Can you help me? I'm building a street team. I'm trying to get on podcasts. Here's all the things that I want to do." And I replied to that and I said, "Hey, let's just hop on a call. Let's talk self-publishing, because that's what I can offer right now." And then that same day, I had a call with Kevin, who was like, "Did you know Becky?" Because Andrea was like, "You should know Kevin." Right? So all of this networking that we're doing behind the scenes, all of these emails we're sending back and forth, is still marketing. Just because it's not something that we can point to and say, "Look at this thing that I'm doing," doesn't mean that it doesn't count as part of your outreach strategy.
Thank you for the loving call-in, because yes, I will say that I am doing a lot of old school marketing, which honestly I think is a lot of what really works. I do have it in my email signature for people to get on the sign-up list. I have it on my website, and I am reaching out. That wasn't actually to my email list, Meg. I just want to be clear too. Like I was doing individual outreach, so that even though it may have felt like it was to a list, because it is generally sort of copy paste, but I did customize my emails to everybody, and I sent it out not to like 4,000 people on my email list, but to the people that I know, that I really think these people know me enough that hopefully they'll help.
And it worked in that way, and that's why we're here, is because you did that to start. So like, just kudos to you to starting the conversation by saying, "How can this is something that I'm doing, how can we work together to get this into more hands?" That was the first step. You can play the like, "I haven't done anything yet, I don't have a plan." But you have a plan and you have a network that you've spent
I've done
decade
things.
building.
I don't feel like I have a plan, but I have done things. So I will concede that point.
Yeah, that's interesting because Becky actually introduced me to Andrea earlier this year, or last year, actually it was. And I interviewed her on Substack a couple months ago. And that's how we got this chain of events. Meg and I did not know each other until Becky introduced me to Andrea, and Andrea introduced me to Meg. And everyone knows each other now. So this is amazing, and I love it. And I am Kevin. I host Stand Out Authors. This is where I'm trying to help underrepresented authors with their marketing, getting things done, completing as many of their amazing projects as they can. And one of those series is interviewing underrepresented community authors, which I think a lot of people in that space need help with. And my background is in marketing and email marketing specifically at this point. So how do you leverage your lists, which is something everyone should be leveraging as a marketer? Even if you do social, even if you do search, you still need to send them somewhere so that you can keep up with them, because other platforms will own you in all other different ways. So the email list is the only way that at this moment in time, as marketers, we have specific direct consent to talk to people without being bombarded in all sorts of different ways where you may or may not agree with the people surrounding you. So this is, I think, one of the biggest things. And I think, Becky, if you have a list of 4,000, that's a good place to get your 100 goal. And especially since you are reaching out to a lot of people individually, having them reach out to people, I think the network effect is also a very important thing, because word of mouth is often better than any other thing, because people trust each other, not things that they see online, for the most part. That's obviously up for debate on certain things, but when you hear a recommendation from your friend, you are more likely to take it seriously. So let's start with Andrea. If you want to talk about, from your lens, what Becky's already talked about, what you would do from the social aspect.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because social media is one of the hardest marketing channels to convert, especially. I think it's one thing to get attention, and then it's a totally separate thing to then have that attention actually make a difference with regards to book sales. So with my book, one of the things that worked for me that I didn't know would work at the time was I so embedded in the queer romance community as a fan first, that by the time it came to talking about my book, I almost felt like I was speaking to my peers at that point. Like, we all read the same books. I just happened to write one. And I built my sort of street team through just posting about it on Threads. So I said, "Hey chat, I have this book. It's coming out. Does anyone want to read it for free and write reviews on the following platforms as a way to boost the sale of the book?" I had no other strategy other than that. And I was surprised by the amount of people who voluntarily signed up. And to me, it was more about the quality of people than the quantity. One of the people who was on the ARC team ended up being the reason that I am now in production for an audiobook that I had no plans on doing through connections. One of the people who's on the ARC team is now my beta reader slash proofreader of my books because she is like a huge advocate of the work that I do. And so for me, it became about like Becky said, the old school relationship building of I just happened to meet these people on Threads. That was just the container that I met them on. But it comes down to relationships at the end of the day. And so, Becky, I think it would be interesting to put out a call. I don't know if you have yet or not on the various social platforms to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Um, who would like to support this project in any way that they can, just like you did with the personalized emails. And I don't know, you never know who may pop up through that. Just like Meg was saying, like, let's hop on a call and talk about like Amazon search or whatever the case may be. Like I think there's people in our communities who want to give back to the community, but they won't know until you kind of speak that out. And the other piece to that is I find that social media is such an indirect path that I'd almost think less about it for book sales and more about it for the people who could talk to their communities. So, other business coaches, other marketers, other liberation, maybe therapists or coaches or thought leaders who could do some sort of campaign for their audience. What comes to mind for me is an unboxing video. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but for the bundle you were describing, for instance, if you gave it to like a, established liberation coach, for example, and this person is going to unbox this bundle and say to their community, you have to buy this bundle. It goes out to support my friend Becky. Like, I think that could be much more impactful than you trying to individually kind of push it out yourself. Those are some of my initial thoughts. What do you think, Becky?
Well, I just wanted to also clarify for social media, I've been leaving a lot of places. So I have a very large following on Threads, which is amazing. And it's like you said, it's a great platform for discussion, not a great platform, in my opinion, for like direct promotion. I think they throttle anything with links. It really seems like those get almost no traction, no interaction. But it's a great place to have conversations or to start conversations. So I'm very active on Threads and have a really good size following there. LinkedIn is another place. So like on Threads, I have like 28,000 followers. So that's like the biggest platform I have. LinkedIn, I think I have 5,000, 4,000, something like that. It's about the same as my email lists. I actually have sort of two email lists. There's some overlap, but there are differences in followers and each of them are around 4,000. But for the social media, LinkedIn, Threads, and then YouTube. And I have several YouTube channels for different activities I'm doing. And so they're fairly small, but one of them, I mean, there's like I think we have just over 500 subscribers. It's not a ton, but it does get enough viewership that maybe even doing some shorts or something there would be beneficial. But like, I'm not using Instagram. I deleted TikTok. I'm staying off a lot of the others. So just trying to think about like those three platforms primarily and what would work. And so I like the idea of just sort of putting out a call, maybe more on Threads and LinkedIn, and then maybe for YouTube, thinking a little more about what that might look like for some video shorts. Cause I think shorts might work best on YouTube, but then like, where do I direct them and what would that, I don't know. What might that
I
look
think
like?
it could be interesting too. You have the embroidery. Like, I think it would be interesting to show that. So I love these personally. Show me the blank canvas and then I want to see like the time lapse of you doing it. I will watch every time I see one, I watch the entire one. And it's the kind of thing that people are excited to watch and share. I don't know if you necessarily need like a huge call to action for those, but I think it could pique enough curiosity to put people into your orbit.
I did have a thought.
I'm so old. I just want to say, like, trying to figure out how to do a time lapse video. I know I can do them on my phone. I guess I just need a tripod and like set it up. But I do love that idea. So maybe I'll figure that out. It might be really boring because it's me sitting in my recliner, like, but whatever. It could be interesting, I guess.
I would watch it.
I did have a thought about the specifically LinkedIn. Threads is not so good for this, but having a discussion like this on LinkedIn where your people on there will see this conversation and they'll want to kind of jump in, especially since you have so many values aligned people. As long as they know that it's going to be happening, I think you can gather a big enough audience there, especially if you do it as something like a book launch or something along those lines, just to get people psyched about it and like, oh, it's coming, right? And I think your message is so good that whoever wants to attend will get a lot out of it. And you'll say, there's so much more in the book that you'll get out of just like leveraging the people you know who can join you on that to gain momentum for it, tagging people or whatever it might be within the platform, and just getting people really excited about the ideas in your book, because once they catch on to one thing and like, oh, there's so much more in store for you, especially if you do it alongside like a bundle. You can either promote anybody who buys today gets the bundle for free or something. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just like, how do I gain enough interest from the platform that I have with the connections I know in order to build momentum and, word of mouth spreading.
And one other thing I think I should note too, because I'm thinking this lends itself possibly to that, is I've highlighted about 10 to 12 women, mostly Black women, in the book that through Q&As. I mean, I'm doing, there's a lot of mentioning of other folks that I've learned from, like Adrienne Marie Brown and Robin Wall Kimmerer, but not people I know, but there are actual Q&As with people that I know in the book as well. And so that's a potential for some, hopefully maybe reaching out to them to say, hey, you're in the book. Would you want to hop on a LinkedIn Live and do a brief discussion or something? So thinking about how I hate the word leverage because it sounds gross, but like how those relationships, because I think it also benefits them for the book to be out there because it's highlighting their genius, which I want to do. So I think maybe thinking about how we can do some of that together could be good.
Yeah. Meg, do you want to go ahead and talk from the search angle? What your opinion?
Yeah, before we get there, I want to give a couple sort of examples that I think would be helpful too, which is that if you do have people that you mention in the book, make sure that they know. When I wrote my business book, I based it on podcast conversations. So I had the recordings, but I still sent to every single person that I mentioned in the book, is this how you want to be represented? Do you want an ARC copy? So that way
I did that with all the Q&A people, the ones that I really like, I wanted their consent to use them in the book. The people that I'm just like referencing their books or something, I haven't. But I certainly could reach out to them.
Yeah. So even if you could send an ARC copy to the people who you've already reached out to, you could offer an ARC copy to some of the bigger names that may not have the capacity to do that. Or Andrea may be able to speak to this part, which is like, if you have specific times where you do cite the experts, that's a great opportunity to put it into some sort of visual graphic and then just tag them. And that way they see it and they know your name. And maybe they reshare it to their platform and people go, oh, that's interesting. Right. And it doesn't have to be a big ask. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. My co-host for my marketing podcast wrote this book, and she just bought a bunch of them and shipped them out to people all over. And she said LinkedIn went completely bananas because people would just take a picture and be like, look, I got my copy. Look, Jessica, it's here, and it was just exciting. And so the selfies that people took with them, it was like $20 each for the author copy and the shipping. But if she were to have paid a PR company for that, it would have cost way more than that for that kind of outreach. So like, you can be, if you have the capacity, if you have the budget for shipping, then go for it. But even if you don't, like, say to people, would you like the ARC? You're in the book. Would you like the ARC? If you're open to it, I would love if I could, come on the podcast or do something like that. Andrea sold herself short in her launch recap too, because she was like, oh, I just went on Threads. And I'm like, no, man, like you have a community of queer writers and one of them promoted you. And then you were able to introduce him to me, and I brought him on my podcast because I was like, you helped Andrea and I'm going to do this for you, right? Like, this community of people is there to not only support you, but to support each other. And you are such a good like maven for connection that people want to reciprocate that. Give them the opportunity to reciprocate.
Yeah, Becky, you are a super connector. Like,
Yeah.
when I think about you, that's what I think about first before feminist business coach.
Well, thank you, because that's the biggest compliment is when somebody says that someone told them you need to meet Becky. That's my biggest compliment that I can get. Like, that warms my heart.
Yeah, you're fantastic at that. And I think that if you do nothing else, no social media, no page optimization, none of that, and you just lean really heavily on your network and maybe your email marketing, because that's the best way to keep in touch with people, like, I think you could hit 100 sales just from that without all of these other pieces. And then, because also you are so good at creating long form content, this is also a great opportunity. Maybe you do, in addition to the private podcast feed, maybe you bring back on those folks that you included in the Q&As and say, hey, I'd love to bring you back on and talk about your role in the book. And then maybe they share it back out, right? So that way the book launch date, whatever that date is not the end of the marketing strategy. It is a milestone. But you could spend 3 months talking about the book without it being like, buy the book, buy the book. It could just be like, I wrote the book and I wanted to go in depth with you. You could have one of those people come on your YouTube channel and interview you about the book and then slice that up into YouTube shorts. Every time I launch a book, I have somebody interview me about it on my channel. Drea, didn't I interview you when you relaunched your business name? I was like, oh, bring me on. I'll interview you, right? Like, Becky, if you need an interviewer, you've got 3 people here who would be happy to do it. So like, sometimes the ask is not always like, share this with your audience. It's, how can we talk about this in a platform that makes sense? Like, I went on Andrea's podcast to interview her because my people didn't, and I think we brought you on mine too, but like, sometimes you just gotta like use the people that you have. Because from a search perspective, there may not be a ton of people out there looking for like feminist and liberatory business books. So the interruption marketing is what may work for you. However, if we're also talking about what are some ways that we can get in front of audiences that may be looking for this or show up in the algorithm, this is a really good time to think about things like Amazon categories. Maybe you're not in the entrepreneurship category, because that can be really tech heavy and very bro heavy, and neither of those are your zone of genius. But if we can get you into the women in business category or the home-based business category, those can be a little bit more, they're less competitive. They're driven more by women in business is going to have more women business owners. It's going to show up in search results for people who have bought books, actually, like Leaving the Casino. I think when you and I looked it up, it was like number 6 in women in business. Jessica's also not making a ton of sales, but she's leveraging the algorithm by putting herself into those categories and getting, to Andrea's point, the reviews that are reinforcing the fact that people who read this kind of book also read this kind of book and promote it on the same platforms. And all of those are pieces of these algorithms that you might then just show up in the also bots. And showing up in the also bots is a great way to have those impulse sales to introduce you to new people without needing to go out and do a boatload of marketing. Kevin, I just talked for a long time. Did I answer any questions that you asked?
I thought you were saying also bots, B-O-T-S. I realized you meant B-O-U-G-H-T-S.
Yes.
Also bot. I was like, what's an also bot? Got it. Also bot.
It's also an AI bot that you can use. Also
No,
bot.
perfect.
I'll be in New York, or also bot.
Perfect. And I do have 2 specific thoughts or questions when there's time, Kevin, if there's time. But I don't want to overstep on your...
Oh, no, let's just go into it while you have those thoughts on your mind.
Okay, well, the 2 things I'm curious about are, 1, pre-orders. Is it worth it? Should I do it? Should I worry about it or not? I'm curious on everybody's perspective on that. And then secondly, or do I just launch the book and say it's available with stuff going up to it? And then the other is, I've already got a group of people who said, yeah, I want to be on your street team. Yeah, I want to help you, whether we call it the ARC team or the street team or like the launch team. what are the things I want to make sure that I'm giving them, like you said, Meg, lots of ways, lots of options of how they can support me. So it's not just buy the book or it's just whatever. Like, I just had me on your podcast. I want to have a lot of ways that you can support me. So I'm writing some of them down, but if there's other things you can think of that I want to make sure that my street team knows. So those are the 2 buckets that I'm most curious about at the moment. But
Can I take the pre-order question
Please.
and then leave the street team question to anybody else? I'll hand that one off. Not my zone of genius. Pre-orders. When do pre-orders matter? Pre-orders matter if you have a very busy audience and a very long runway, because they may pre-order in November and then you're not selling it until May, and they don't have to remember to go back and get it. Pre-orders matter if you already have a pre-existing authorship and people might see in places like Amazon or BookBub, oh, Becky Mollenkamp has a new book coming out, I'm going to go pre-order it, right? And people will surprise you with pre-orders if you're in that circumstance, but it's not a huge deal. When pre-orders really matter is if you're trying to hit like a bestseller number. Pre-orders basically count as the number of sales on the day that the book goes live. So if you get 20 pre-orders, then it looks like you're having 20 sales on day 1. And then if you get another 5 people who buy it that day, then that's 25 sales in a day. For some of the smaller categories, that's enough to be in the top 10 results for women in business or one of those smaller ones. And then you get that little orange bar that says bestseller, bestseller, right? So if that's part of your strategy, then that might be worth it. It also doesn't hurt to have pre-orders. If you know that people are going to be buying, especially if they're buying on Amazon and they just want the digital copy and they don't want the bundle and they just want to support you with that, $9.99, $12.99 sale, it doesn't hurt. But if you also are planning to say, I would prefer to sell them on a secondary platform, I would prefer to sell them directly through my website, then don't do a huge pre-order campaign. Give them the option first to be able to buy it directly from you, because you're probably going to get a better price differential on that, which will offset some of your costs. And they're more likely, if they have the physical copy, to like take the picture, put it on social, support you in that way. So I think a huge portion of pre-orders is like, what's your overall goal? And how much do you want the long tail of, I sold 25 books in a day. But also, if you don't pre-order and you sell 5 books a day for 5 days, that's actually looks like more longevity in Amazon's algorithm. So 6 to 1, half dozen of another. That was not a clear answer. I hope I gave you enough.
No, it was great information
to make a decision.
You gave me enough information. I don't know if I kind of want somebody else to make my decision, but that's how we all are. But my thinking is, because, especially after listening to Amelia Ruby's experience with selling the bundles and where money actually came from, money isn't my biggest goal here, but it would be nice if it brought in some meaningful money. That would be helpful. And I think the bundles are going to be the better way to do that. So I almost feel like pushing people towards that, at least in the beginning, versus worrying, because I'm not really worried about bestseller lists and stuff. I just don't think for this that's the place that I want to put my energy. I think the bundles might make more sense.
Okay, I'll make the decision for you. Don't do pre-orders.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And it feels, honestly, that feels like a weight off my shoulders, which is usually a good sign that it's the right choice.
Yay. I can speak a little bit to street teams as well, because that was your other question. Whenever I'm on a street team, I like way too much information so that I can decide how I participate. I find that when someone's like, can you share this post on social media? I kind of go, oh, well, no, my schedule's busy and it doesn't quite fit. But if they said you can interview me on my podcast, or you can share a link in your newsletter, or here's a story you can share, or if you could just show up to this event that I'm having and, be part of a panel, then I can go, oh, out of these 5 options, I actually like this one. And so that has worked for me on the other side of the street team, is when I have almost a menu of options that I can pick from that would really support them. Even one person, like sometimes don't have the capacity to do all the interviews and stuff. She was like, if you buy 5 books, you get the bundle or whatever the case may be. And it's like, send them to your clients. I was like, sure. If that's the easiest way I can support, then I'll do that. For mine, what I really liked was creating the social media graphics and then seeing people like post them and tag me, something about that just felt like a huge win for me personally. And because social media is my thing too, I don't know if that was like a positive feedback loop or something, but that
No,
was
the
the most
dopamine of
rewarding
it.
part. Yeah,
The
the
dopamine
dopamine
of
of like,
other people sharing your stuff.
yeah, there's something about that piece when I had my book launch, when I saw people like posting, especially the graphics I sent them, posting about it. Something about that really lit me up. And so I think even like baseline, just, sending out like, hey, can you share this out, could also be an easy, like quick repost for some people.
Yeah, I think it's just adding as many options like everyone was saying, but don't make it too many options because then people are like, oh, I don't know what to do or choose. And one thing that you can potentially do as well, I think you did have this in your form, was what other ways are you special, and how does that help spread the message if you're interested? I mean, because the people who are getting this thing are probably already interested in helping you. So it's like, what is their special sauce, and how does that apply to your launch and them helping you? So in my particular case, it could be doing another live with you just alone and talking about the book and stuff like that. So what are the specialties of the people? And I think if you are already like individually messaging people, if you had the additional, what other ways do you think might be helpful in helping promote this? Because I think everyone in your circle wants to help you, right? I think that's the one special thing about you, is that people want to help you, especially since you're such a good connector and such a good provider of information and resources, all this stuff. Like you're really good at helping people. So how can people help in return?
Thank you. I have another question that I'm this one's gonna feel like vulnerable, but I think I won't be the only person who's had this thought at their first time writing a book, which is around the ARCs, advanced review copies, which is basically giving someone a copy of your book for free, right? Because you're saying, here's a digital copy and or a print copy, depending on who it is or how you're sending it. And I'm giving this to you with the hopes that, you're gonna share about it on social media, or it's gonna like basically it's gonna help me get the word out to more people. And I think there is that thought of like, but what if that's somebody who would have bought a copy and I've just shot myself in the foot because now they're not buying a copy, right? And that feels vulnerable to share, because it's not, again, I'm not trying to make a ton of money, and money's not a consideration. So how have you all managed that, of like, who gets advanced review copies, how you think about that as a strategy, how you balance that with like, also like these, I don't want to just give away what somebody might pay for, right? Because there is always that real concern too. So I'm curious, like, what you think about that part.
I think for me, I felt enough of the reward of having someone read my book and review it than I would have felt from the monetary reward of them buying it. Um, that I feel like I'm okay with it, but I also have this thought leading into my second book, where I don't know if I want to reach out to the same people because, well, if they like the first book, shouldn't they just buy the second one? So I don't know. I still think ultimately I'd rather get them reading it, posting about it on social media, and get the review, because that also is a really high value for me. And just kind of say, well, for their labor in that process, they get the book for free, I guess. But I don't know if that's the right answer either.
I think also you can be generous while recognizing that this is within capitalism, which is what you're talking about so much in the book, right? And you can frame some of your messaging around recruiting ARC readers or giving them an ARC copy in that language of, listen, if this is something where you want to bring me on and promote me, or you're willing to write a review, I would be happy to give you a free copy. If you don't have the capacity to take those next steps and you would prefer to just buy the bundle, here's how you can get on that list. And so it's not, here's an ARC copy, don't you want it? Here's the expectation that I have for you, that you have to do these 5 things. You could also like give away the first chapter of the book as a freebie, and at the end of that, if people actually read the first chapter of the book, you could have a link to say, would you like to join my ARC team and write a review for this? Or would you like to buy the whole bundle and read the entire book that way, right? So that way you're giving them a little bit for free. And if you do it that way, you can track who's downloading it, depending on the software you use. You could do it in Kit, you could do it in the software like BookFunnel, Story Origin, whatever. But you could give away that first chapter, maybe even like read the first chapter on your podcast to make people feel like, oh, I've got a sample, I've got a taste of what this is. And then the call to action on the podcast can be, if you want to go buy the bundle, here's where you can get on the wait list for it. If you're interested in helping me promote this, here's how you can find out more about getting an advanced reader copy and what that could look like, right? So it doesn't have to be get the download, write the review. But also, like with some of these books, your margins are $2 or $3. And so if you can get the podcast interview that maybe turns into a $1,000 client, then that's absolutely worth the investment of the $3 that you lose in the royalty payment, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, it feels like a vulnerable question to ask, because I don't want it to come across as like greedy and selfish or whatever. And I know it's like, it feels like some scarcity thinking. And yeah, I exist inside capitalism. I put a lot of effort. Like, I do want to feel some amount of compensation for the effort of writing the book. I think a lot of that, again, because of the way my goal setup is that it's going to come through, again, like you were talking about, the visibility and the credibility. That said, I don't want to just be like, there is a part of me that's like, I just want to give this away to a bunch of people who aren't going to do anything with it, right? So I think that I liked the language you use. I'm going to go back and watch this to grab it around, like, basically, I'm happy to send you an ARC if that will help you write a review or do the thing they said they'll do, right? If you don't have capacity to do those things, I completely understand. And here's where you can buy the bundle if you want to read the book later, right? This is I'm trying to give it to the people who are going to be able to help with these street team actions in this window, right? So if you can commit to that, of course I'm happy to, because that feels right for me. That feels like, yeah, I'm happy to give it away to somebody who's there's an exchange, there's reciprocity. And I think that's the piece that sometimes it's like, I don't want to just throw books at people who aren't like, there's no reciprocity. They're just like, sure, I'll take a freebie, like, but you're not ever going to read it. You're not going to do anything to help promote it. That doesn't feel like it's aligned with my values or how I want to show up. So I love the language you use, Megan. I think that'll probably be the way I go, versus maybe even sharing a piece of it, because I don't want it to be like, I'm going to tempt you. You got to pay me. It's not so much that, it's more that reciprocity piece that feels important.
Yeah.
So.
I'll also say, from my perspective too, I love being an ARC reader for digital copies and then going and buying the physical one for my own marketing. So I already know that with you, Becky, if you were to send me like a digital version, I will go buy the physical one so that on launch day I can like hold it up on social media and be like, look what I got, you know? But I don't really read physical books. They're like collector's items for me. So if you had, like, as an ARC reader, if you send me a physical copy, I'm probably not going to read it just because it doesn't fit with my daily habits. It would be really disruptive to my flow to actually remember to like pick up the physical copy. So I think that maybe even for the ARC readers, saying, you know, I'll give you the digital copy, but it'd be really supportive if you could also purchase, you know, if you have the capacity to purchase the physical one or purchase a book on bundle or something like that, because I know that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think
I am exactly the same. I just held this one up. I haven't cracked the spine of it. I bought it and put it on my Kindle, and that's where I read it so I could highlight it, because I felt bad highlighting something that's beautiful. Same thing with Amelia's books. I have 3 copies that I'm on my shelf, and I bought the bundle that had 3 physical copies and the digital copies so that I could read it on my Kindle and have the pretty versions on the shelf behind me, because that's how I feel the most like aligned with my values, that I can display who I'm supporting and that I'll actually read it.
I was just going to say, if they read the book, but you have things in the bundles that you can offer them aside from the book, because there's going to be all this other stuff, they can purchase that. And therefore, you know, they don't necessarily need to buy the book anymore, because obviously they've read it for free. But you are also adding these added value things that are available to them that they are not going to get, that could act as a way to incentivize them to do that, versus just, you know, leaving a review or whatever. So you have the ability to to sell them something else that's outside of the actual book itself.
Thank you. That was all very helpful. I took notes. So if anyone saw me looking down, it's because I was taking notes, because I'm going to be working on an actual plan. I'm doing things, Meg. I think the thing that feels lacking for me right now is just like something that's actually lined out where, it's laid out by week or whatever, where I actually have a thought around, here's the focus thing I should be doing this week, because it's feeling kind of haphazard at the moment, which in these early stages is all right. But I want to create something where I feel like I actually have a roadmap that I can follow to remove some of the, I think it's maybe my ADHD brain, but like being able to remove all the noise and just say, okay, I know the action steps I need to take, and that will help me feel like I'm actually doing something meaningful that's moving the needle forward. I'm doing those things, but I can't, it's harder for me to feel it because it's not like it's planned out. You know what I mean? So I think that's my next step.
I would also say that I feel like writing the book is a job and then promoting the book is a different job. So you have your coaching job, you have your podcasting job, and now you added this like, let me go become an author job. And then it's like selling the book is a completely different job from writing the book. So I'm so glad to hear that you're like, the book is done. The book is complete. The book is formatted. The book is ready to go. Now I have to go sell the book, because if you're trying to sell the book while you're writing the book or getting all those like kind of administrative tasks done, it just feels like heavy in a way. Because that's what I did with my first book. I was like, oh, I'll have it done by then. And then I started doing the podcast tour. And then I was like, oh, that was a great thought that I had on the podcast. I'll add it to the book. And then the book didn't go out the way that I wanted it to, because I was adding to it until the last minute. And that was a dumb decision. So I want you to think about this project as a completely different thing from writing the book. Selling the book is all marketing and promotion, and it's not about, yes, you can take the material that's in the book and maybe pull some of it out and talk about it on podcasts. And what is the core thing that you want people to learn from the book thematically? But then it's all just marketing.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because there is this part of me that's like, I continue to have ideas. And at some point, I think you just have to, and I'm sure every author's gone through this, at some point you have to say, this is the end date. And there's going to keep being ideas that I wish I'd put in there, and I wish I had said it this way or whatever. And I have to be just willing to say, it's complete, period. That's it. No more. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. But I think because I have hyperfixation, I was hyperfixated on the book. There was no space or capacity really for me to be thinking about marketing. I had like a little bit of space, but that's kind of, and now I want to be able to bring that same energy to this phase of like that hyperfixation and not have to be thinking about the book, because I don't do well with split energy in that way. So I think I'm ready to just sort of hyperfixate on and actually create a plan, and then fixate on like actually implementing that plan. And you guys have given me a lot of stuff to start mapping out.
Yeah. And then as far as the last piece, which I will add, is the email marketing portion, and the fact that you can leverage your list for all the people who are in your circle. Like we already discussed earlier, there's so much that you can do with the people you know outside of social media and direct connections, that you can really bring everybody to specific parts of your list and market to them in different ways, because if the person on LinkedIn is completely different from a person like in podcasting group or in your feminist coaching, like they're all different and they deserve different ways to be talked to. So I think that's one thing specifically as far as like businesses go that is different from fiction a little bit, where you can talk to people in a different way, especially through like the bundling of stuff and the pre-ordering and all, or getting rid of pre-ordering, but the bundling of stuff. Like what is it that somebody in podcasting would appreciate more than somebody who's on LinkedIn?
Yeah, thank you. And I need to think through, I think the last thing I'll say too is just, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, which is that when it comes to promoting yourself, like I love connecting, I love helping other people, all that. It can be hard because you're like, I don't want to overwhelm people, and I don't want to annoy people, and I don't want to talk about it so much that everybody's like, oh my God, it's all she talks about. And I have to give myself that permission and the reminder that it feels that way to me, but not to everyone else. And I always tell other people, but then don't take my own medicine, which is like, you need to be talking about this to the point of you are completely like disgusted by how much you're talking about it, because that's the only way people are going to even hear it. I'll put something out once or twice and then think, okay, well, I did it, nobody cares, and then I shut down, and I can't do that here, and I'm not going to let myself do that here. So I'm publicly stating I won't do that here. But it is scary to, like, send multiple emails about it when you're just like, I already said, and they didn't sign up or they didn't buy it, and like that must mean they don't want it. But also, they may not have read it, or they forgot, or they meant to come back to it. And I have to, like, give myself that permission, and just also the reminder for everyone else, because I think so many of us we relate to that feeling of like, I've already talked about it. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, you cannot talk about your thing enough. There's just different ways you talk about it in different times, because people are not in certain places at certain times. And they, if you send them an email in the morning, they might read it, but at nighttime, they might not. So as many times as you can get things, your messaging in front of people, especially the people who you think will want it, right? Because they just need an additional nudge. Most people are not going to do it on the first time unless they are already like really chomping at the bits to get to it. So I think as many reminders as you can possibly do, especially in things that you might gloss over, like the email signature. Not talking specifically to you, I think you said you already have it in there, but in your Threads profile and your LinkedIn, top tagged post, all of these different areas where if you're selling the book is your number one thing in this season of your business, then that should be the thing that people see everywhere. So that way, if they don't see it this time, they remember, oh, I was supposed to buy the book. I forgot. Right.
And I want to add to what Kevin says, which is, yes, absolutely. Omni-channel presence, mention it everywhere, put it in your profile everywhere you can. But that doesn't mean it has to be the first thing in every email that you send. You can tell a story. You can record a podcast about something related to the book and be like, I go into this in more detail in the book. Have you gotten your bundle yet? Here's how you can get on the wait list, right? So you can integrate it into what you're already planning to talk about. It doesn't have to be like just yelling, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book everywhere, because that is absolutely going to turn people off. But if you make it part of your overall strategy of this is everything that I talk about, and now I've distilled it and compressed it into a much more consumable resource that you can read it in 200 pages instead of 200 hours of podcasts. And here's the podcast where I talk through everything in it. That's something that people are going to go, oh, yeah, I need to go buy the book. Right. So it doesn't just have to be the call to action. It can be the PS in emails for the next 3 months. It can be the sidebar of your everything for the next 3 months. It can show up in the bottom of your show notes for the next 3 months. It doesn't have to be the front and center thing everywhere, but it does have to be reinforced everywhere. And then as the time gets closer, you can do more of it. So I would maybe at this point, it's like the PS in the emails, and you mention it 2 emails a month. But then as the date comes closer, you're emailing twice a week. And during launch week, you're emailing the day before, the day of, the day after. And then you're going, you know what? If you didn't buy it by now, who cares? It's still going to be relevant in a year, And because you're not playing this like pre-order number one game, you're just trying to impact the way that people are thinking through your own thought leadership practice. It doesn't all have to be dependent on this one day of sales to make or break your whole career,
We are coming up to the hour mark, so I did want to give everyone a chance to talk a little bit about where you can find them, just in case you're interested more in Andrea or Meg's books. And we know Becky's book is coming out. So Andrea, go ahead and let people know where you're mostly active.
Yes. So on the marketing side, you can find me at onlinedrea.com, and I'm OnlineDrea everywhere. And if you want to get a queer, smutty romance book, you can find me at authoroliviacarter.com. Olivia Carter is my pen name, and I'm on Instagram the most with that one as well. The book is called Soft Launch.
And Meg?
For my business, you can find me at loveatfirstsearch.com. You can go find my book, Social Slowdown, anywhere that books are sold. And I am working on a second business book, which should come out in 2027, which will be about how to create content to show up in AI without losing yourself to the AI bots, which again, also not the same as the also bots. And then for my romance, my pen name is Bailey Seaborn, and my third novel, Two Wrongs Don't Make a Playwright, comes out in March. You can also find both my podcasts. I have one that's business called Aggressively Human, and I have one about romance that's called First Dates and Soulmates.
Awesome. And Becky?
2027 sounds like it's a million years away. It's next year. That's just wild. Where does time go? What is time? So you can find me at BeckyMollenkamp.com. I'm sure my name is here somewhere where you can see the spelling, but also Google knows you can wildly misspell it and it will find me. And I have a newsletter here on Substack called Feminist Rants Are My Superpower. So hopefully you can subscribe to that, because that will be where I will be sharing a lot of this information. But if you go to BeckyMollenkamp.com/book, that's where you can sign up for the wait list. And I'm everywhere with my name as well.
Awesome. Yeah, this was so fun and amazing. I think this will help people who aren't just Becky, but if you're doing your own book launch, this will give you some ideas on what you can do. And if you're interested, you can contact any one of us. We all have Substacks, I believe, and we're all over the internet if you just search for our names, I'm sure. So
can I also just quickly say thank you from the bottom of my heart? I said it at the start, but I want to say it again. Super meaningful to me that you guys offered to do this. And Kevin, thank you for like spearheading it. It really means a lot. And community is everything. The book is very much talks about that. And I think it takes a community to sell a book. So if you're going to be writing a book, remember that, because you can write a book, and if you don't have a community behind it, who's buying it? So community matters in all the ways.
Yeah. And one more thing, let's all just give one piece of general life advice to people at this moment in time, because obviously right now is kind of crazy. So if anyone has...
Well, that was mine, was community. If you don't have community, find your community. You need community. We all need it, but also like the world's hard and the world's worlding, and community matters more than ever.
I don't have any advice. I'm gonna Becky is my advice. Becky is my, can I say you're my Yoda? I go to Becky for everything. I'm like, help. So she's my part of my community. So I'm gonna piggyback off of that. You know, find your people who you can support you through anything that's happening in your life.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that too, which is that none of us are islands. If you're writing, you need to have people who are going to buy from you. Otherwise, you're a writer, not an author, right? Just putting that book up online doesn't make sales for you. So think about how you can use your relationships, use your network. And part of that is figuring out how you can use your own brain, your own heart, your own life in order to support others, not just so that they will support you back when it's your turn, but because the work that we're doing matters. And the impact that the books that we're writing, whether they're business books or fiction books, like there's a reason we're putting them out into the world. They can change the world, but they can't change the world if nobody reads them. So think about how you can support other authors in addition to having people who can hopefully support you.
Yeah, and I would recommend for anybody doing any sort of work like this is just allow yourself to rest. I know that's a big thing for a lot of people, but especially now you can get worked up and you can worry about a lot of things, but know that you also need to rest to charge yourself so that you're able to continue on. And if it prevents you from burning out, because that is very easy to do in anything, especially in business and selling. So make sure you do that for yourself, as well as figure out how to plan for things so that you're not scrambling all at one time. So rest and plan out the future so you're doing it over time versus all at once and just driving yourself crazy, right? Well, this is awesome. Thanks everyone for watching, and thank all of you for coming on here. This has been great. And we can have a follow-up closer to Becky's actual book launch. So when she's ready to have it out there, we can just quickly come on again and see how the progress has gone. All right, thanks everyone.